everyone. Welcome to Feeling Full and Finally Free, a caregiver's healing journey. I'm Jeanette Yates, and today we're venturing into a topic that many caregivers might find hitting close to home: codependency. The renowned author Melody Beattie has done extensive work in this area, helping countless individuals, including me, understand the dynamics of codependency and how it impacts their lives and relationships. So let's dive in to what codependency is, recognize the signs, especially in the realm of caregiving, and also we'll explore some steps toward leading healthier, more balanced lives so that we can be more effective caregivers and have lives of our own. So first up, what is codependency? Let's start with actually defining what codependency means. As Melody Beattie defines it, it is a learned behavior where a person develops unhealthy relationships that are often one-sided, emotionally destructive, and can even be abusive. At its core, codependency is about gaining a sense of identity and self-worth through the approval and dependence of others. In the context of caregiving, especially for our parents, codependency can develop almost unnoticed because caregiving is inherently self-sacrificial. However, when our identity completely merges with our role as a caregiver, it can lead to unhealthy patterns. And that's where we're going to dive into common signs of codependency. Now, this is something that really helped me in determining where I struggled with codependency in my own relationship with my mother and in other areas of my life. And it helped me get better by tending to those relationships in more healthy ways. So the first thing we're going to look at is we're going to go through several signs that might mean you're codependent. So obviously I can't diagnose your whole life, but I'm just going to be sharing signs, and then we can talk a little bit more about how they might show up specifically in caregiving. So the first sign is over responsibility. This is constantly feeling like it's your duty to fix or manage everything for your parent, often at the downside of neglecting your own needs. Another sign is boundary issues. Maybe you're struggling to maintain and set healthy boundaries. Maybe you're not even able to have any boundaries. This is very, very common in caregiving situations because how do you set a boundary with somebody who needs you? So when we're not able to set boundaries or set healthy boundaries, this can lead to feelings of being overwhelmed and resentful. And I hear from caregivers all the time, those are the two things that they mention so often: resentful, and then of course they feel guilty for feeling resentful, and they're overwhelmed by it all. And of course, I can relate to that as well. Another sign of codependency can be need for control. This is when you're trying to control your parents' actions or decisions out of fear or anxiety about what might happen if you don't. I speak about this often when I talk with caregivers, and in the Self-Caregiver Community Facebook group, we talk about, are you doing something? Are you making a caregiving choice because it's the right choice? Or are you doing it out of fear and anxiety? Not only about what might happen to your parents, but about how they might respond to your choice that you're making. Another sign that could mean codependency is going on in your relationship is people pleasing and approval seeking. Going out of your way to make your parent happy, even at the expense of your own happiness or well-being, or even their well-being, can be a sign of codependency. And then, of course, this will sound familiar to you, whether or not you have codependency or not, but guilt and low self-esteem is something very prevalent in the caregiving space, and it can mean there's a codependent relationship going on. Feeling guilty for taking time for yourself or believing that you're not good enough unless you're constantly caregiving. These are all examples of signs that could show that you have a codependent relationship going on. Now, let's dive deeper into more examples of codependency in caregiving. One example is that you might find yourself doing everything for your parents, even things that they could manage on their own, because it feels easier and it offers you a sense of control. Like maybe the way you do it makes more sense or is easier in general. Maybe if you do the thing, they don't need as much help with the thing, right? So you can just do it for them and it's easier. Or maybe you are suppressing your own needs and desires to avoid a confrontation. All the while, that resentment is building up. I can tell you from personal experience, it was this second one, this avoiding confrontation, that kept me in negative patterns for a long time. It was easier for me to just do the things or not push a certain issue about what was the best healthcare or what was the best living situation, because I didn't want to deal with the confrontation. Or I didn't want to deal with even the idea that there would be a confrontation. I wasn't even sure there would be, but I didn't want to handle it. I didn't want to deal with it. I have been there. So as I'm sharing these things with you, I want you to know that I have been there. I know what this feels like. This is how it was for me when I was in that codependent relationship, caregiving relationship with my mother. I felt like I had to meet all of my mother's needs at the expense of my own needs and at the expense of the needs of other people in my life that I loved and cared for, like my husband and my children. This constant overextension of your capacity is not only something that can drain you physically. I know it drained me physically, but it also left me emotionally fragile and disconnected from my own life. And it can lead to that in your life as well if you're struggling in any of these areas. And that is one of the reasons it's so important to address codependency or address some patterns. So maybe you feel uncomfortable with the label of codependency. I know when I talk to caregivers and I use this term, I'm very familiar with it. It's something I've studied for a long time. I've been reading Melody Beattie's works for a long time and other works about codependency. I've studied this on my own and done my own research on it as well. But for a lot of people, addressing codependency is hard because they don't even like the label codependency. And I'm here to tell you right now, you don't have to wear any particular label. But if any of those patterns of behavior resonate with you, it is still beneficial for you to address those issues, whether you call them codependency or not, whether you just have this one bad behavior pattern, this bad habit, or whether you have all of them, it's still worth addressing. And the reason addressing codependency or these patterns of behaviors is crucial is because it can take a toll on your mental and physical health. And of course, your relationships with other people. And of course, it takes a toll on the relationship with your parent that you're caring for. Prolonged stress and neglect of self-care can lead to burnout, anxiety, depression. And I speak to caregivers every day where they are dealing with burnout, anxiety, and depression, which is also leading to trouble at work, trouble at home, trouble with their friendships, So the codependency or these negative behavior patterns strangle the potential for a genuinely and mutually respectful relationship with your parent, who may need more independence than you realize, and also what they need, whether they need more independence or maybe they need more care from other people. Either way, a codependent relationship isn't really helping them. It's keeping them from the care that they need, and it's keeping you from the care that you need. Now, we're going to dive into steps to recognize and overcome codependency. Let's talk about how you can look at some of the patterns of behavior and start to recognize if and where codependency is an issue for you. Now, of course, I'm speaking about your relationship with the parent that you're caring for, but of course, this may resonate in other areas in your life. I know that as I started studying codependency, I recognized that, oh yeah, I wasn't just codependent with one person in my life. I had some of these negative behavior patterns in other areas. And honestly, if I'm going to be transparent with you, which is what I always try to do, I want to let you know that this is still an area where I'm working with some of the relationships with my family members, because these patterns are deeply ingrained. But when we take the steps, which we're going to talk about now, to recognize and overcome them, we become healthier, and so do our relationships with other people. So our very first step in recognizing and overcoming codependency is awareness and acknowledgement. The first step is recognizing and admitting that codependency exists in your relationship. And like I said, if you don't like the name codependency, call it what you want, but recognize that when you are become aware and that something is not right, recognizing that something isn't right is the first step. And then recognizing also your ability to make changes, that's the second step. I often tell caregivers that the number one thing keeping you stuck in the negative patterns that you don't like, codependent or not, is that you believe that you're stuck, that you have no control. And the truth is, you do have control over your own behavior. You do not have control over anybody else's behavior, but you do have control over your behavior. Okay. Step 2 is to set boundaries. So once you become aware of where these problems are, you can begin practicing setting small, manageable boundaries. This might mean scheduling regular time for yourself or even delegating some caregiving tasks to other people in order to create that time. I always say, especially when you have no boundaries with somebody, having the first boundary be the biggest boundary probably is going to be too disruptive on everyone. Sometimes it's necessary just for the health and safety of your loved one and yourself, but typically you can start with something small. Like, if your loved one is living with you and they always want to be in the room with you, but you would really like to have alone time, start by setting a boundary of saying, why don't we watch this TV show that we both love together? And then after that, I'm going to be watching a TV show by myself. Okay. And you don't have to explain why, any of that. You can just have it be simple. And I have a whole series of resources on boundaries. So check the show notes and the description for more information. If you want to learn more about how to set that first boundary, I've got you covered there. But let's move on to the third step in recognizing and overcoming codependency. So we've talked about, we have self-awareness and acknowledgement that something's not right, something needs to change. We might have some of these codependent behaviors. We start setting small boundaries just by creating a little time for ourselves, delegating some other tasks, taking back some of that time. And then the third thing that we want to do is learning self-care and self-love. So self-care is a term that is very broad and complicated and means different things to different people. So I want to just clarify here that if you're doing things that you're calling self-care, but they don't make you feel good, if they make you feel guilty or somehow give you a negative feeling about yourself, they're probably not the right self-care activity for you. And there's ways that you can go about finding the right self-care activities. Again, I have some resources that will help you here as well. Go ahead and check the show notes in the description. I have something that can walk you through some of that. But in general, you want to make sure that you're making some intentional time, like we talked about in step 2, to begin learning how to truly tend to yourself, truly give yourself what you need. Making self-care a priority in your life, I know it seems counterintuitive, especially when we have such a pivotal role in caring for others. But the bottom line is you are pivotal in the care of someone else, which means you need to take care of yourself. You are one of the main resources for care for your loved one, which makes you a vital thing that must be protected. Okay. So even if you can't quite consider self-care as something that you should do just for yourself, know that if your existence is important because you're a caregiver and you give to other people. It's also important because you're human, but know that caring for yourself is vital in the care of the people that you love. You want to engage in activities that nurture you, your mind, your body, and your spirit. Remember that self-care shouldn't be about fixing something that's wrong with you. It should be about fitting into your life, fitting who you are and who you want to be. Okay. So self-care should not fix you. It should fit you. And then of course, a lot of times we as caregivers, we give up the things that we used to love. We don't have time for them. but now is the time to reconnect with your hobbies and interests. You know, the more you feel like you don't have time for yourself, the more you need time for yourself. All right. And the fourth thing is, and this is something I advocate across the board. If you're dealing with caregiver burnout, overwhelm, stress, anxiety, depression, seeking professional help is a perfectly appropriate thing to do. And I know people's resources are different. People have different insurance situations and all of those things, but find professional help if you can, a therapist, a social worker. A lot of times caregivers, a lot of times hospitals and doctors' offices have social workers that can help you find the appropriate resources for you, guide you towards support groups that might be helpful, and can provide valuable insights to overcome your burnout, your codependency, etc. And Melody Beattie's books, including Codependent No More, are excellent resources. And before we wrap up, I want to tell you about another book of hers and invite you to join our summer book club. We will be reading Melody Beattie's book, The New Codependency. It's diving deep into the concepts I've just breezed over today, and we'll be supporting each other towards healthier relationships with our loved ones and with ourselves. The book club is just an online book club. We're going to officially, quote, start on June 25th. You'll read the book on your own, but you'll get weekly emails from me, keeping you on track and giving you some insights and steps to take in moving forward with the book. And then, of course, at the end of the summer, or on August 5th, we will have our big book club meeting, so to speak, on Zoom. And if you would like more information about this, visit the show notes or come find me at the Self Caregiver on Instagram. Let me know you're interested in the book club and I will get you started. Again, the book club starts officially on June 25th. It is time. This is the time to start taking a look at your relationship with your loved one. Decide if this caregiving relationship that you're in might have some codependent traits, and then take the steps to begin creating healthy boundaries for yourself and for your loved ones so that you can live full and finally free. Remember, you're not alone in all of this. Recognizing codependency and taking steps to address it can lead to more fulfilling and balanced life for both you and your parent. I encourage you to explore Melody Beattie's work further, especially by joining our summer book club. Again, check the show notes. There'll be a link there. Feel free to reach out to me on Instagram at the Self Caregiver to join our community, to join the book club so that we can support each other in this journey towards a healthy, more vibrant life. Thank you for joining me today. Stay tuned for more episodes of Feeling Full and Finally Free. Take care and remember, you are worthy of a full life filled with joy and freedom.